Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today. This is part of our 2025 eMTB Shootout series, but we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into some of the conversational topics that a lot of you have asked us about, whether that's DMs, YouTube comments, emails, and basically a lot of what we see and have experienced ourselves out on the trail. So things from motor, battery size, battery removability. There's a lot of things going on in the eMTB space right now as this relatively new niche of mountain bikes is evolving. And every year during our shootout, a lot of conversations come up. And this year we thought we would make a separate little video to talk about some of those things. Without the support of our partners, we wouldn't be able to make this series possible. So we'd like to thank Fox Racing, Schwalbe Tires, Velocirax, and our host destination, which is Zion Mountain Ranch. They've got a lot of great trails, lodging, and an awesome restaurant here. So if you're looking for a spot to travel, go ride, bring the family and do some sightseeing, Zion Mountain Ranch is definitely worth putting on your list. So I am Drew, Cole, Sean, Robert, and our guest tester on the end over here is Leonard. He is one of our members on our new members platform and won the grand prize, which is to come out and be a guest tester in our shootout. So we're honored to have you, Leonard. Thanks for the support, and we're stoked you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Robert, let's lead it away. I know you've compiled a list of comments that we've gone through from our YouTube video and a lot of other spots. So let's take it away and get into some topics.
Absolutely. And by far the question that we get asked the most, pretty much in any video in our shootout, is why is a certain bike not in the shootout? So I just figured that we'd share our the process for selecting the bikes and ultimately getting them in to create the list of this year 12 bikes that we ride in the shootout. So essentially we have contacts at brands, marketing contacts that we work with throughout the year, throughout every year, to get the hottest bikes and to basically have the supply of bikes coming in with us to test. Availability is a huge thing. Often brands have got a bike that they've released 3 months before they're actually available in shops. We sit somewhere in the middle where they'll have initial prototype bikes that they have had off the first production run that they'll send out to select media partners. As a result, sometimes timing doesn't work out. So for this year, Forbidden was one that so many people have asked for.
Including us.
Including us, yeah. And we really did try, but ultimately, they don't have a bike that they were willing to give us for the last few weeks to test prior to this shootout. So we can't include it in this shootout. Sorry, it's just how it goes. There's no pay to play with us at all. We do not take money from brands to participate in these shootouts. So it's not being tiered based on that. We basically select the bikes based on what we believe to be the biggest contenders in the market. The freshest bikes. We've got no repeat bikes this year from last year.
Well, I mean, in namesake, right? So in namesake, there are repeat bikes, but as far as unchanged bikes, correct. Everything here, I believe, is new, updated models of bikes. And last year we didn't have a Levo in the shootout, right? But we had the Levo for several years prior, and it was just an award-winning bike. So there are years where maybe we don't have a bike back because it's unchanged. It's already done a good job. We feel that, these tests are rather time, labor, and cost intensive for us to create. And so if a bike is unchanged, sometimes we're like, well, this is still a good bike and it's unchanged. So let's bring something else that's new in that people might be excited about. Similarly, some brands opt to sit out, right? Sometimes like Forbidden, they're like, this is the same week they're having 3 or 4 editors come out to a media camp, so they can't spare one of their 3 media bikes to send to us. But other times there are brands who are like, we're going to release an update on this bike in the next 6 months, so we don't really want our current bike to be promoted, maybe not do as well as it could when we know something better is coming out in just a couple of months. So, there's a lot of stuff at play behind the scenes. But yes, to Robert's end, we reach out to just about every bike brand because we want to ride them too, right? I mean, ultimately, we're mountain bikers and we get excited about bikes just like you guys. So if it's not here, it's usually not our decision.
And we're sorry if we didn't include that one bike that you're looking for. As always, our inboxes are open. hit us with a question. If we've ridden the bike, we'll give our feedback on it privately.
So are the brands. Message the brands, tell them that you want to see a bike in our shootout. That helps massively.
Absolutely. If you guys are bummed that there's not a bike here, know that we emailed that brand and we asked them to send the bike here, and it was just not a priority, I guess, or it was unavailable. So if you guys are that passionate about that brand and you want to see it here, email them, flood their inbox, and next year, hopefully they will feel that pressure and include a bike for our shootout.
There we have it.
Okay.
Next up, and something that I think across the board we've all had really strong opinions on. Drive units have got more powerful in the last couple of years. There were like the Rocky Mountain drive unit, the Dyname in the past, that was notably more powerful than the rest, but everything else has kind of caught up to that now. Midway through the shootout, Bosch released their updated Gen 5 system with more power. So there's a bit of a horsepower race going on in the space. Is there such a thing as too much power?
Yes. In certain situations. If you're pedaling a gravel or paved road climb to the top of your downhill course, full throttle. But if you have steppy ledges, loose rock on the side of a giant cliff, you want enough power.
Yeah. And good controlled power. Leonard, 275-pound man over there. Is there such a thing as too much power for you?
Yeah, there has been on certain situations. Controlling the front end on climbs proved to be difficult in some of the boostier or quick charging motors like the DJI. I had a lot of issues controlling that, keeping the bike underneath me. But on a fire road, I want being 275 pounds, I want all the power I can get. So, but at the same time, like you said, on a ledge or once you get the overrun, I remember, I think I was passing Sean, he stopped to fix something on his bike, and I stopped to see if he needed anything, and I kept going. And I was like, I guess we're not going to help him. You know what I mean? I just kept going. But it's something that definitely a learning curve, and you got to keep in mind in situations that could get you into trouble.
Okay.
While we've got your input as a heavier rider, I mean, I'm 220 pounds. I'm a good 30, 40, 50 pounds heavier than the rest of the crew here. And I've always found that if I'm on a like-for-like drive unit, it's unfair, the amount of effort I have to put in to keep up, especially with this guy soft pedaling. As a 275-pound rider, do you find that you need to really try and be on a more powerful system or in a more powerful mode to keep up with other people?
Absolutely. When we went to Richfield, we did all that climbing. Best believe I was looking at what color all your bikes were in, and riding next to Brian, and he's got it on eco, and I'm here in purple and shifting between purple and red. If I fall behind, I'm going to turbo and then trying to catch you guys. So it's definitely needed it. I've been that way with go-karts too. I cannot break around corners. I'm always the last one. So this is how it works. But yeah, so it's definitely a plus, especially when you can adjust it and play around with it. So for a heavier rider, you definitely want a manageable power.
Yeah,
that's it. I think for me, power is nothing without control. Like ultimately, okay, for a straight up fire road, just trying to get to the top of the climb as fast as possible. Like the DJI system, its peak 1000 watts power is awesome if you're not trying to conserve battery. Mm-hmm. But when you do get into the more fun technical climbing aspect that we all love, too much power, spinning wheels, looping out the bike, it just becomes difficult to manage. And we've definitely experienced when we got our Bosch update immediately, or the initial tune that we had on the eMTB Plus mode was pretty gnarly. And me and Drew set about taking it onto this, edge
high consequence.
High consequence, that's the perfect way to put it, climb, where going off the edge wasn't an option, but we also needed the power there to get up these steps and technical moves. And yeah, we struggled. We were terrified, to be honest.
There was a learning curve for sure, and that's all the power in the world is useless if you can't deliver it, right? And I mean that comes from like hot rod car racing to now dirt bikes, now to eMTB, right? And it's just like controllable power, not only in terms of traction, but in terms of sensitivity is where I really found that I was starting to struggle as this, horsepower race keeps going and going. I'm finding that the sensitivity that's being delivered, the pedals and the cranks, it's just like you're instantly just hitting this power band. And, for so many years now, we've been able to just hop on a bike. It's good. Let's just go ride it, right? And now I'm almost always feeling like I got to go in the app and I got to detune sensitivity. I got to tone down the way the power ramps up, and you're having to find a way to basically get the motor to not come on as hard or as punchy in those technical climbs. Now, obviously, like this is not everyone enjoys turning around and climbing up a black or a double black downhill on an e-bike, right? But that's what we're doing, and that's what I make you guys do.
Yeah. Drew's the 0.1% in that.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't matter on a fire road, right? But like when you're having to really slow down your cadence to time a pedal stroke to get just the right amount of power to lift the front end before you do a hop on a ledge, you're like, I'm just kind of feathering the pedal to set up for this power stroke. And if that drive unit senses that first power stroke and just sends me into the rock, I'm in trouble. So yeah, I find that like more power isn't always the answer. Control is better served. And so I just have found myself detuning in the app and toggling between power modes way more than I ever have. I've always been a guy that's like all boost all the time, or maybe eMTB mode if I need to be conscious of battery a little bit. But now I'm just like, give me plus, give me regular eMTB, take me down a tour. And like, depending on what's ahead of me, I'm using different power modes way more often than ever.
To the company's credit, I would rather have the ability to go down in power than be wishing for more. So being able to go in that app and tune it to your preference, that.
Did you ever wish for more power though? Like, were there times on a full power e-bike last year where you're like, boy, I wish I had more than 85 and 650?
It wasn't until I rode the DJI motor or the Avanox motor originally and went back to a standard drive unit that I was like, oh, I kind of missed that, because a lot of the climbing I do is point and shoot fire road. I don't seek out the technical climbs. If I'm on my e-bike, I'm looking to shoot up the mountain and ride some gnarly moto hill climb down and just burn elevation. Yeah. So for me, that ability is really cool. But coming here, no, definitely like these climbs, I didn't wish for more power.
I have done.
Yeah?
Yeah, okay. For sure. Again, maybe it's a weight thing or just technique or whatever, but in the past when we've had that Dynamo system, I couldn't get up some stuff on a Bosch bike that I could on the Dynamo system.
Okay.
And that still stands, like our pre-update Bosch compared to the post-update Bosch and the more powerful, specialized and DJI drive units. I can get up things that I just can't, because my weight, my technique, my cadence, whatever, bogs down the motor to the point that it just stops giving me the assistance that I need, and I'm stall out, and that's that.
Okay.
The inverse of that is that bikes with short chain stays, bikes with high stack heights, bikes with, just generally balance that is more rearward on the bike become an absolute nightmare to control when you've got that extra power and you start hitting the more steep climbs. The more power you have, the more your weight is getting pushed rearwards on the bike, the more your front wheel goes light and the less you can turn going up the hill. And you've seen me multiple times this week just stalling out and not making a climb, and I don't think it's entirely bad technique. I think it's just being the heavier rider, struggling with motor power and control, still delivering on those less powerful systems, and geometry just pushing me off the back of the bike.
I definitely struggled a lot on switchbacks this week. Like, I just was like, why is this front tire just pushing as I'm trying to carve? And it was just that, right? It's like, it's that extended overrun or that extra kind of snappy power. I just was like, man, I've never had so much trouble just hooking a tight switchback, and it's because that power's just going. Outside
of growing chainstay length, static chainstay length, is there a sweet spot that you prefer, or is there a better way to put it, is there a number that you don't want to go down to on these more powerful?
It seems like below the 440 mil chainstay mark, things can get a bit unwieldy. I'm thinking Pivot, Shuttle, LT, Haro. When just in the steeper stuff, especially if you've got steep and technical, that weight balance is just pushed too far off the bike. Of course, the steeper your seat tube angle is, the less the rear needs to grow because your body weight is pushed naturally more forwards on the bike. But yeah, it seems sub 440, things become tricky on the most technical and steep uphills. But you do get rewards for that in certain elements of the way down the hill. So it's all a balance to find, and something, I guess, for you to have a look when you're selecting your bike, to check the geometry and to think about what you're going to be riding and to make sure that the bike is going to perform, in the way that you're going to need it to as a result.
Okay. So I guess ultimately, more power isn't always better power, or better for the trail.
One thing I think is notable for me, if we're talking about control of motors, is the Bosch update. Not the Bosch mid update of the Gen 5, but going from Gen 4 to Gen 5. Should we talk about the improved sensitivity of that drive unit, and perhaps talk about also the Levo and the DJI systems, being more sensitive and refined and controlled than, say, drive systems from a year or two ago?
Yeah. Leonard, what were you spending most of your time on drive unit wise before the shootout?
Before the shootout?
Yeah.
EP801.
Okay.
And my personal bike has the TQ motor on it.
Okay. What were your thoughts having ridden a DJI drive unit, the S-Works, and Bosch pre and post update? What were like standout features of those?
The standout was how it's something that you automatically on paper think that you want, and realizing that it's not always good for you. You know what I mean?
The extra power, you mean?
The actual power, yeah. Yep. And then there's differences, learning the differences in how that power is given to you. That's an awesome thing to realization to come to, So the first one I went on I've been riding my TQ a lot and then going to the DJI, and that was just ludicrous, especially hitting the technical climbs. I had problems managing it, keeping it under me. Wanted to manual when I didn't intend to manual, things of that nature. But I eventually got the hang of it. The Bosch motor was definitely more manageable. The way it was delivered, I definitely got the hang of it and was able to climb these Black Diamond technical climbs that I wasn't able to when I first got here. That I'm doing it without stopping. So it was definitely a great learning experience.
Okay. Sean, thoughts on your differences or opinions on the drive units?
I mean, from our SL shootout, the DJI was my favorite, but we were climbing fire roads and nothing extreme. But then taking the DJI motor to Grafton and trying to climb up that stuff, having all that power, even in trail, which was untuned and maxed out, to boost, which was all maxed out, it was impossible. I couldn't go 5 feet over any of those rocks. And then switching like the Blue Diamond Trail or the Blue Trails up here, climbing it was pretty fine, like still a little too quick around some of those rocky switchbacks. So it's just pre-planning your route before you get there, and then dropping to like the Bosch, way more controllable. I mean, I didn't even really notice much of a difference between the updates. Like, it just still felt very smooth and gradual. It was just the overrun, which was something to get used to. And then the Levo I thought was the most refined from a power delivery standpoint. Like, even in turbo, I thought it was just the perfect climbing machine. I think it was the balance between geo and just being placed in the right spot, and how they deliver power was, I think, they did a good job on that bike.
Interesting.
Yeah, okay. I do like that specialized drive unit.
You do?
I think they've done a pretty good job with the control of it. And the whole ecosystem there is pretty damn nice as well, the way it's integrated.
Yeah, I think the Bosch for me is kind of a standout. And the places that I really notice the refinement over Gen 4 are the ability to modulate the power, like primarily like stand-up wheelies, wheeling out of a switchback, kind of playing around, or like when I'm approaching a technical ledge or other such maneuver where, like I was saying, right, I'm slowing my cadence down in preparation and I'm hitting it sometimes with back wheel first and front tires in the air. and just doing like a power wheelie up a rock ledge or something, full weight, full strength, I'm like standing on these pedals trying to muscle up something on the back wheel. And it's like almost like, I know they're doing like, what is it, like every 100th of a second or 100 times per second, they're, monitoring the system. So the traction and power delivery is really impressive to me on the Bosch, I think, above all else. I think that new Gen 5 drive unit is for sure a big improvement and a big step in what can be coming in the future. Is really neat. The Specialized, primarily in turbo, I thought kind of was a little light on the pedals and it would just take off like a rocket ship, which is great in some scenarios. And then in the auto, I found in the default tune, there would be a lag sometimes when I wanted the power in certain torque loads or certain cadences. Like it would be like almost like a full pedal stroke before it would give me what I wanted. Whereas I felt that Bosch was a little more instantaneous.
For sure. I think that auto mode's a bit of a funny one on the Specialized, but
yeah,
I know that you can obviously tune the turbo mode.
Right.
Just bring down that surginess and the kind of willingness to go. So I think that nicely moves us into another thing that we've been asked a lot recently, and it's, no BS, should I be upgrading my bike? So in the last year, I guess, we've moved on to like what feels sort of a new wave of drive units on bikes. And with them, the rest of the bike hasn't changed a huge amount. Geometry's been pushed and pulled a little bit here and there, but the bikes haven't changed that much if you compare them. So are these new drive units as the primary, weights come down overall, but are these drive units worth upgrading? Somebody say, if we take the Levo as an example, previous generation Levo to new generation Levo, do you think it's worth people spending those thousands and thousands of dollars to get the new one?
I think that small of a jump, probably not. But if you're someone that 3 or 4 years ago bought a bike with an EP6 and you're in the market for a new bike, it leaves a really good golden opportunity to come up to the latest gen tech, and you'll see a huge improvement over that system and how it feels on the trail.
Yeah, I think for me it's night and day. Even bikes 2 years ago compared to now, you've got more power in the drive unit, for better and for worse, but more control in the drive unit. You've got lighter system weights, which means bigger batteries, bigger ranges for the same overall weight, which is awesome. And
less rattle.
But that's the biggest one. Yeah. That is huge to me. And that's why, as you'll see in the main shootout, it's why one of the best handling bikes isn't the bike that I could recommend, my friends at least, and certainly wouldn't myself be purchasing, purely because of that rattle.
Yeah.
So you would recommend somebody that had a Bosch, like a Bosch Gen 4 or older, to upgrade to a Gen 5? You think it's worth it?
Not to everyone, for sure. But I'd say, if you are happy with how your bike rides down the hill currently, and you've got a Bosch Gen 4 powered bike, and you get enough range out of whatever battery is fitted to it, you're fine. Like, you don't need the newest tech. You're not likely to be suddenly dropped on the way down the hill by these Gen 5 bikes at all. On the way up, you might struggle a little bit for power if your friends are going to be in that full power mode the whole time.
Or if they've upgraded their system to the new software update.
Yeah.
Which is elective.
But if you have a good Gen 4 bike or a good previous generation Levo or, any of that sort of topic, I wouldn't personally.
Leonard, so you're one of the few people in this conversation who is still buying and paying for your bikes.
Sucker.
So what are your thoughts?
I think immediately.
What makes you upgrade?
I think immediately, if you're asking that question, the answer is no. Because if you're not having fun when you're out on your bike, you already know that. If you're not keeping up with your friends and it makes it, tedious, and again, it comes down to fun, you're not having any fun, you already know it. I had the old version of the Specialized Levo S-Works SL with the 35 Newton meter, and I wasn't having fun. It was loud, They're coming up on people and they're turning, looking at me, giving me dirty looks, you know what I mean? So I was like, I need a new motor. I didn't have to ask anyone. So if you're asking that question, most likely the answer is no. You'll know it when you need it, you know.
Good words, good advice, I'd say, yeah.
That's top advice.
There's still a lot of really good bikes out there, and doesn't mean you can't have fun on them. And I mean, there's a lot of things in this world that you can spend money on, and I don't know if needing to buy a new bike every year is one of them, but obviously for the people who know it, they know it right away, right? Like they don't need an excuse or a reason to justify. But it is undeniable. There are some improvements out there. Does that mean you won't have fun if you don't update? Or if you buy a last generation that's on sale for a good deal, just know your resale value is going to be less, but there's no reason. Like ultimately, we're all about having fun on the trail. So find a bike that lets you have fun on the trail and don't worry about the rest, is my opinion to people.
For sure. I'd say the only caveat to that is that if you have an income that has you enough money in your bank to have that toy money, then these new Gen 5 or like newer gen bikes the last couple of years are better overall, better products. Mm-hmm. So also don't let that stop you if you are the kind of person who needs to have or wants to have the latest and greatest and you can afford it. This is coming from a point where I've never had money to just be like, yeah, I need the newest one of that, and just being able to take out my credit card and do it.
And simultaneously, I would say, don't let the constant release of new stuff prevent you from buying a bike, because there's always going to be new stuff. So like you're going to be waiting forever. And I've given this advice to several people who have sent us, emails and messages, and it's like, hey, if you wait, by the time you wait for the next thing to come out and you buy it, there's another new thing coming out, right? Because brands are sort of always trying to leapfrog each other. If this brand releases a new bike this year, their competitors are going to release it next year. So again, it kind of circles back to get the bike that you're going to have fun on the trail, you're going to be happy with, is comfortable and within your budget. And if you're having a good time on that bike, it doesn't matter what gen it is, how new it is. If another new one comes out, obviously it's a bummer when you buy something full price and then instantly is outdated. But you know what? Like, it happens with everything. iPhones, computers, cars. I mean, there's always new stuff coming. So don't miss out on the smiles and fun and good times you can have because you're worried about what technology is going to change. Technology is always going to change. It's always going to hopefully improve. So have fun while you can. Like, life's too short to worry about waiting to have the latest and greatest thing, because in that 3-4 months of waiting, you missed out on a whole bunch of really fun rides.
I think one of the important things too is like we're in such a good place with geo and fit and kinematics that the last 3 years, or even more so, it's hard to find something that's terrible. Like, you have to search out something terrible. Yeah. And even at a discounted price, you're still going to have a bike that's super fun. And maybe that bike has some support from third-party brands to bring it up to riding competition with some of the newer bikes and things like that. And looking at it from someone that is always trying to search for something new, then realizing you go on a ride, or like for me, it's with cameras and stuff like that. You're like, oh no, like this is actually really sick. Yeah. Like, I just want it because it's shiny and new. And then I look at my personal bike, like it's old and it's metal and I've never had a bad time on it. So
how good is the fleet of bikes that we tested this year? Geez. Like,
it's crazy from just a few years ago, the difference, because at the time, you're like, oh, sure, we broke some stuff or this or that. But yeah, I mean, at the time, you're like, yeah, these are pretty fun. We're having a good time, right? We're smiling on the trail. But then, when you flash back and you look at stuff, you're like, wow, like that thing wouldn't hold up today, or I'm so glad that this has gotten that much better. So it's...
For sure. And I think what's really notable is how smart brands have gotten spec in their bikes as well. We've got every bike this year, maybe there's one exception, but the codes that were on that Trek aren't standard spec. But every other bike had brakes that feel like really powerful with limited finger input. Drive units are all good. They've all performed reliably, apart from one that we had issues with. But
self-inflicted issues.
Yeah, somewhat self-inflicted issues. And just like all the wheels have held up, no punctures, bike weights have been across the board lighter on average than last year.
Yeah, less bolts are rattling loose. There were still some, but not nearly as many. Like stuff wasn't quite falling apart.
Has there been a shootout with no flat tires yet?
I mean, we usually have very few flats. You know, I mean, we typically run the Schwalbe, heavy duty casing tires, but
No rim dents either.
yeah, that's a first.
Yeah.
I think one of them does have a flat spot in it.
Yeah. Well,
But did that, yeah.
you can flat spot anything, Sean.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
But I mean, every shootout group test I've been a part of, I've flat spotted or.
Yeah.
It's those moto landers that you keep doing.
I mean, they're so fun.
Batteries?
Well, what I was going to say is with the, are we there? Do we have the bikes that we dreamed of 5 years ago now? Say the Uno or the Norco site, both 800 batteries, both in the 47, 48 pound weight range, both with durable overall components that you can push hard and not worry about.
Seeing how my enduro bike is 41.5 pounds with no motor, I mean, I think we're there. I think looking at where it's going, the only thing I would ask for is, battery, we don't need to have the power discussion. Be cool to see what happens with battery tech and the efficiency to get that weight down. But outside of that, what more do you really need?
45 pounds.
I mean, yeah, but that's battery tech. Can you lose 2 pounds out of a battery?
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. So
that's right. I want to be 45 pounds removable batteries.
Yeah.
Or easier to remove. They don't have to necessarily be like the Trek or Mondraker where you can pop them out the down tube. But
do we know what the 600 to 800 watt hour DJI battery weight difference is?
I think it's like 2.2 pounds or something.
That's the Bosch one, 600, 800. I don't know what the DJI. I would imagine.
I think it's still around 2 pounds.
Really?
So if we're in that 2 pound kind of range, the Uno's 45 pounds with a 600 battery.
Yeah, we're getting close. Yeah,
Pretty damn cool.
yeah, it's awesome. It's getting closer and better every year for sure. So
Are you currently, say the more aggressive but lighter weight bikes, the Uno or the Bullet, are you riding those bikes differently to how you would ride a non-E version? Say if you took the Bullet and the Nomad?
climbing, but not descending.
Of course, on the way down the hill, do you need to take different line choices? Can you hit a corner the same?
No. In many ways, I can actually hit them better on the e-bike because of the traction, the weight, the smoother suspension feel. And I think that's something that a lot of, I talk to a lot of pro riders, and we talk about e-bikes quite a bit because they love riding their e-bikes, and they're all have shared man, I can't believe how much smoother my e-bike is in the rough stuff, or I can't believe how much more braking power or cornering traction I have. And we're seeing it in downhill bikes now, right? For the years, everyone was getting lighter, and we now have World Cup downhill racers are strapping weights to their bikes, and that mostly has come from e-bikes. They ride their e-bikes and they're like, I like how my suspension feels, I like my braking traction, I like how I can corner. Let's get my downhill bike a little bit closer to my e-bike weight. And I don't think a lot of people know that, and that's pretty awesome.
Cole, did you get some sent through or something?
Yeah, so it was a 1.87 pound difference between the 600 and the 800, with the 800 being 8.24 roughly, and the 600 being 6.23. So around 8 kg and 2.3 pounds, whatever it is.
We're getting damn close.
Yeah.
Really cool. I think something else that people would like to know when you're choosing a bike, so we typically get sent the top or the second tier down of bike from a brand to test, but we're probably in agreement. I don't know about you, Leonard, but would you buy the absolute creme de la creme top spec bike in a bike range? Or would you look slightly further down the range and try and find that sort of, the point of diminishing return for where quality stops getting better and you're just paying for flashy finishes?
Right. I've done both. It really depends on the options given to me. But I guess it depends on the specs that the manufacturer is given. I'm kind of a Fox guy when it comes to suspension. So if the top spec in a bike that I really like doesn't have, the Fox stuff, sometimes I'll buy the base model and make upgrades. But if the high end has all the stuff that I like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And I really like that wireless transfer dropper. So that's something that that'll woo me, you know what I mean? So I guess it really depends.
Would you consider the black stanchion performance elite level of Fox, or do you need that flashy gold Tajima?
my answer embarrasses me, yeah, but I like the shiny stuff,
It does look good.
Especially if everything else has the Kashima coat, you know what I mean? So my previous bike had the Kashima front, the fork and shock, but it had the axis dropper, and that bothered me that I didn't have a Kashima dropper. I almost replaced it with a wire transfer. So
And now you got that
now I don't have to
transfer your shopping cart. You said you're already purchasing.
Yeah, but
One thing I agree. The difference in brand and stuff like that, I can't do it.
oh yeah, mixing up the brands.
Yeah.
It's something. It's shallow and meaningless, but it's important to some people.
For sure. Yeah, and I get that, and especially if you're spending, $9, $10, $11, $12,000 on a bike, then being able to show off the flashy Kashima or the highest of the high, I understand the feeling that creates. I think maybe for us though, our minds would be a little bit different, although we understand the aesthetics and that wow factor that a top spec bike can provide. We probably wouldn't go for that bike if we were putting our hands in our own pockets, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that is two major factors for me. One, I don't have the disposable income. Two, I've ridden enough bikes that don't have the flashiest, most expensive equipment to realize my timed race runs, my enjoyment on the trail aren't that different at all. So I don't need it from a performance standpoint to make me really excel on the trail or to have fun on the trail. So I think those two elements combined, mean I'm going to start, if I'm looking to buy, I'm going to look at what gives me the best suspension, brakes and wheels. And from there I can upgrade as I need.
Yeah, I look exactly. I look at it from I bought a wheel set 3 or 4 years ago, and I love it. And so if I was buying a new bike today, wheels aren't important to me. I try and find the cheapest possible entry level that gives me the brakes and at least performance level suspension. And
the performance level stuff would be your cutoff.
Yeah.
So that Mondraker that we had on test, performance fork and shock. That's all
great.
good.
Yeah.
To be fair, that stuff felt really good.
Yeah, and it's funny looking at even the new dampers on the Fox side, Grip X versus X2. I've gotten along better with more Grip X dampers than I have the X2 dampers.
Grip 2 or X?
X. Did I say 2?
2 was the
Grip
previous
X,
four-way adjustable.
X versus X2.
X2, they're both new.
Yeah, but you're talking about new generation Grip X damper is less preferable to the X.
No, he likes the
You
X.
prefer the X.
No, I prefer the X, yeah. But I prefer the X over the X2. For me, I will get lost in clickers and be fiddling with high and low speed rebound to my heart desires, and the bike rides way worse than when I didn't fiddle with it, and just having one rebound, I'm like, sweet, that's great. And yeah, to me, it finds a really nice balance and a little bit cheaper. And for whatever reason, the way that damper moves oil just feels great to me. So
Interesting. Sean, where would you go in a lineup of specs? Say you've got using Fox as I guess you do Fox and RockShox, but a performance or a Select or a Performance Elite or a Select Plus or an Ultimate or a Grip X2.
I'd probably go Performance Elite or Select Plus. Base level RockShox Zeb is an awesome feeling fork 90% of the time. So I wouldn't go below that. Okay. And then I prefer GX AXS for my drivetrain, so I'd probably be looking at that. And then brakes XTs probably, okay. Or SLX. SLX is pretty damn good. But Usually I'd be between $7,000 and $9,000.
Okay.
Buy once, cry once.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, for most brands at the moment, that seems to be the kind of nice range where...
At least for e-bikes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, nine grand on a non-e-bike, you're getting a bitch and build normally. Okay, is there anything else we want to talk about?
There was a comment I saw about like integrations. So your hand controls for the e-bike system, the display, charge ports, that sort of thing.
I think we could touch on removable batteries in that comment or that section as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like I want to give DJI or the Avinox system props, but at the same time, it's like those buttons tend to be so close to the grips that they end up getting knocked unintentionally on descents. So I'll look down at the display, it'll be 3 screens over and 2 different modes, and I'll be like, I don't remember touching any of these buttons.
How much time do you take to move those around? Because you can move them.
Yeah, but they're usually so cramped between.
You can also remove them. You don't have to have them there.
That is true. You can go, since that display is touchscreen.
It's a pain to take the grips off and do the whole thing, but you...
Not for you, since you keep swapping grips around all the time. But hey.
But to be devil's advocate, you don't even have to have those buttons on there to work that bike, which I think is awesome. I love that.
What do you look for in an e-bike system? Like, do you like, say, the Bosch style where you basically get no information unless you've got the screen like on the Mondraker? Or do you like having that like big display in the top tube like DJI?
I don't care one bit about a display. To me, especially if it's like on the handlebar or whatever, or, like the old Shimano, this is one more thing to break. If I'm riding a good trail, I don't have time to look at it. I was like, we were going down and Drew's like, how much battery you got left? I was like, I'll let you know when we stop. I'm not taking my eyes off this trail. I'm wide, my eyes are wide and a huge smile and I'm just flying through. I do, some of them I inadvertently switched up and kick it off at the wrong time because my hands are wide. So where they can be adjustable on the bike, for everything, even dropper post, whatever. We kept swapping bikes. I mean, I broke a seat because I couldn't find the dropper post in time on a landing. So it's just I need it to be part of muscle memory. You know what I mean, and something that's just there when I need it. Without thinking about it.
I think that's one thing that is notable about probably our perception of these systems is that because we are swapping between so many of them, we're probably not that fussy. Right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think all of the integration in the systems now, you're going to be able to get your cockpit and your display set up in a place where you're comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm fussy, but
We know.
I would like to see SRAM update some of their controls instead of having pod controllers on both things. Like I do like the individual switches that like the Bosch or the DJI system has, and I don't see there being a reason why SRAM can't do that instead of having just those giant pods under there. Yeah. Aesthetically, it bugs me. But SRAM's integration is obviously really good because they got their whole ecosystem. You've got their bridge display, you've got it all wired up to their drivetrain. So you got auto shift, free shift, or whatever their technology is that they're using. And then and then you can control the reverb dropper from the switch. You can control your modes from the switch. It's just...
That's why I'm surprised to hear you say that, because sure, you have that pod, but that pod's also controlling your droppers. You don't have a dropper cable or dropper.
Yeah, but they could also wire that into like a Bluetooth switch that is similar to DJI or Bosch. Yeah. So it's just something I would like to see.
Very fair. Batteries. Removable or not? That is the question. We've got a pretty even split, or maybe slightly more non-removable.
Yeah,
this year.
I would say we've got 3 easy to remove, dropping out of the drop down tube. So gas, Trek, Mondraker.
Specialized out the side.
Specialized out the side. So we got 4, and then there's a handful of bikes that have the down tube bottom bracket area extended to slide the battery out of those, which take a bit more time.
Like ugly.
Way uglier.
Yeah.
Way uglier. I mean, the Specialized ain't much better because that down tube is ginormous.
Yeah.
But hey, the bike ride's awesome.
I think you'd have to, and Drew asked this question to me when we were on the trail, is how often are you doing rides where you're killing your battery? If that's every week, twice a week, sure, like having a removable battery where you can swap out is pretty important. But if you're doing it like once every 2 months, like I don't see the need to sacrifice aesthetics or battery slimness to have that when you could go out and get a range extender and have 2 of those on you, right? And really get the mileage you want. So I think it depends on your riding style.
I'm not a huge range extender fan personally, and I think that purely comes from most of them not being secured to the bike strongly enough, and the cables always feeling like a bit of an afterthought. I think if we got to a point where range extenders were bolted into the bike and within that bolt was also the connection to the bike, things would improve drastically.
Yeah.
Similar
that'd
to
be
like
sweet.
a fidlock system that is also,
Electronic.
yeah.
Yeah.
Leonard, you live in a cold environment and you travel a lot to ride your bike. How important are removable batteries? And of course, with your weight, would a 600 watt fixed bike be a no-go or a deal breaker for you?
I have never had a bike with more than 600 watts, and it's never been a deal breaker. I've been out with you guys for 2 sessions every day, and I came close in Richfield. I haven't killed a bike yet. I mean, when I say 2 sessions, like 2 4-hour sessions, you know. So I think, and that's something that if you asked me before this experience, I wouldn't say this, but I think that's an overreaction from folks, you know. If none of you guys killed a battery this week, and if that's who's doing that, who's riding like we were riding this week, you know what I mean? Pros maybe, you know. So I feel like that's something that's definitely overstated or overrated. So as far as removing them, I've never touched it. I'm a set and forget person, you know. Even with a suspension setup, I try to get it nice and never touch it. I've never had problems in negative 39 up in Minnesota with it. As long as it's plugged in, they have smart systems that maintain the battery, that kind of thing. So, and with these, how expensive these bikes are, who would leave them outside, you know, and take the battery inside out?
They're in your bedroom.
Yeah.
The wife sleeps on the couch kind of thing.
Cameras on them on my phone.
So because of that, is a brand who integrates the battery solidly inside the down tube and shaves maybe a pound off the overall bike weight as a result doing a good thing?
Yes. I now aesthetics, I don't like the way it looks with the big lock on it, like the Trek rail, or to me it just looks outdated. Like I was so surprised, and it's just lack of knowledge, but I was so surprised how much you guys liked it. It always looked like you know, outdated, old school kind of bike. And I was really surprised. So it made me want to get on it. And it rode nice. So you shouldn't judge it by the way it looks. But I just feel like the sleeker it is, the more like an analog bike it looks, the more effort engineers and designers put into every aspect. When you spend that kind of money, you want to feel like they thought of everything. You know,
clearly the audience and how they vocalize the concerns with a non-removable battery, there must be a segment of riders, and I understand it. Like a 600 watt-hour battery, for me, even if I go out for a ride on eco, I'm kind of disappointed by the range that I get out of them sometimes. Okay. So, but I'm 220 pounds and like to try and cover a good bit of ground on my rides, and you know, doing the job that I do have enough time from time to time to go out on a big mission. So I get it. I also do love how the lighter bikes with the fixed batteries ride, and I also much prefer the reliability of a bolted in solid battery than I do most of these removable systems. I've had multiple bikes over the years that have cut out because removable systems and the way that the battery is fixed into the bike isn't quite solid enough that when you hit a big compression, the 8-10 pound battery that you have in that down tube flexes a little bit and breaks a connection, and then you land and you go to pedal and the motor's turned off. It's not been happening quite so much of recent, but it's still a possibility, I think. We had the Specialized battery came loose. I think that's maybe the only issue we had overall of drive system. Oh, there was a couple of others.
DJI, we had a few
The
problems.
DJI issues were debatable whether it was a specific DJI problem that's going to be occurring for production bikes,
Or an us problem.
or an us problem / a pre-production problem, or a broken part problem, or whatever.
One pet peeve I know we've all kind of talked about is the charge port orientation. And it's always the 5th or 8th way you twist it in. Like brands, if you could just put a dash on the inside of the charge port and a dash on the actual plug, that way when it's dark and I'm leaning over a bike and I'm trying to get it plugged in, it just goes in. And that might be, we have 12
We're
bikes.
talking Bosch systems.
Bosch systems. Yeah, specifically Bosch. Yeah, and it's just like the amount of times I've sworn I tried, like, this does not go in this hole.
Again, I think it's a thing that every brand has their Bosch charge port at a different orientation, but if you own the bike, the third time you do it, you remember, okay, yeah, the flat bit points up or something.
No, Leonard says no, he doesn't.
No? Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Every time I go to plug mine in, it's like a Rubik's Cube.
All right, take notes, brands, to figure that out. That is an easy fix. We just saved you guys a whole bunch of aggravation from your customers. So
Charge port doors as well. Those rubber flaps, I really don't love how they look. Color matched or a bit sleeker would be nice.
Crestline has a nice one
For a plastic door.
for a plastic door, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually found that one quite hard to push in sometimes because it was stiffer, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
minor stuff there.
Yeah, we're getting into the weeds, but
Yep.
also when you're spending 15 grand maybe on a bike, you want every single detail to have been sweated as best as it could have been, right?
I think it's also one thing, when we're talking about the pricing on these bikes, to also realize the tax that needs to be paid on that. It's the MSRP number you see isn't what you're spending, so it's also thinking about.
It's very much location dependent.
True. Yeah, Washington is not kind. California is not kind. Oregon's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go to Oregon to buy your bike.
I had range versus weight as a chat, and as a 220-pound rider who rides with sub 200-pound riders all the time, it's really frustrating how.
You are the weakest link.
Yeah.
So this week, everybody, not just the old man's been waking up rough, walking funny at the night, going to bed early, and you're telling me you
Expose
want,
us like that.
are you telling me you want more of that? You want more battery? I mean, I can tell. I can see you just spending a week with you that you foregoing lunch and keeping going. You know what I mean? I can see you doing that, and we come in and plug them in, have lunch, and go back out. But for the average person, I just feel like 600 was good enough. Or the batteries. I don't think they need to get better, just lighter.
All right, fair enough.
What I would say is the reason I'm hurting so much most of the time is because in order to make sure that I can hang with the crew, I'm down a power mode. So I'm maybe relatively putting in more effort, or I'm just less fit and I don't know it.
That's a lie, because you ride way more than all of us.
Well, yeah. So I think for me, 800 batteries are always going to be preferable in bikes. Just that extra does just take you that little bit further and make it more worthwhile to have the full power e-bike system. I think if I'm on a 600 battery, maybe an SL system is going to be preferable, because I'm not going to be so inclined to burn all that battery so quickly and then cut my ride short.
So then maybe we take a just hypothetical question or vote. Do you think brands should make batteries quickly and easily removable so that consumers can choose what battery size works for them?
I'm in the middle. I think the side door batteries like the Levo are meh. Okay. But if you have to drop your motor to remove the battery, maybe not the best for consumers. Okay.
I'd rather a brand just make the best bike that they can with the battery that they want.
Robert?
Yeah, I'm sort of for that. Like, make the overall system as optimized as possible, and give a version with a 600 and a version with an 800 or 1000, and let the consumer choose the battery based on that.
Okay. Yourself?
I agree with Sean, as long as it looks good.
There it is. I think that's probably most of the stuff. I mean, obviously we get comments and questions of all sorts, but I think those are kind of the main ones that we really get the most often on eMTBs, right?
Yeah, well, if you do have any further questions, drop them down below. We'll take our time to respond to them in the comments. And yeah, I think that's about it, right?
Yeah. One other thing, I guess, maybe it's a good time to plug a new series that I will be working on, and maybe we'll get you guys in on too, but it is called the Battery Killer series. And I will be working on documenting a repeatable test lap on pretty much every new test or every new drive unit and battery combo that we get. So we've got a repeatable lap, mileage, roughly repeatable weight out of myself, and just kind of have a chart that we can start building out that you guys can see the difference between a 600 and 800 pre, post update and all the different brands. So it's hopefully a little bit more usable and digestible information to like give mileage and vert, because there's so many variables, and that's why we don't often talk about it, right? Because hard pack versus deep soft, dirt, weight, rolling resistance of tires, there are so many variables that can really affect range. So hopefully in that Battery Killer series, I can start to really present some support for those different battery sizes and different variables. So make sure you guys check that out too. That's it.
That's it.
Okay, make sure you guys check out the rest of the 2025 eMTB Shootout series, and hopefully you guys enjoyed. Leave any questions you have down below, and we'll see you out on the trails.